Did you know that on July 20th, 1969, over 500 million viewers were watching the live broadcasting of the moon landing? Almost the entire nation came together as a whole to watch this life-changing event. We all enjoy watching a piece of history in the making. Whether or not we know at the time that we're watching history, it's still interesting to watch our nation surpass others. I have many family members who have witnessed the event, and they have shared many fascinating stories with me. The purpose of my speech today is to inform my audience on how the moon landing affected the world. I am going to tell about what it took to make it to the moon, how the moon landing impacted the world back then, and how the moon landing impacts the world today. So, how did we get to the moon? Well, the main goal was to set goals and reach them. President John Kennedy made a speech in 1961 to Congress stating that we would have a man on the moon by the end of the 1960s. Little did he know that this was accomplished only 8 years later. Many technological advances had to be made. We had to advance our rockets, our computers, and our spaceships so that they were able to sustain life for a lengthy amount of time. We just didn't know how long it was going to take to get a man to the moon and back. Next, I'm going to tell about how the moon landing impacted the world back then. Watching the moon landing on the news provided an escape from the Cold War and the Vietnam War going on. Some people who were watching the moon landing were inspired to become scientists. Suddenly, the impossible seemed possible. When our flag was placed in lunar soil, this asserted the USA for dominance. The rest of the world knew that we were a threat. According to the ReviewJournal.com, Andrew Chaikin, a famous author of some science and space books, stated that the moon landing was a very inspiring event. It showed us that human beings can accomplish seemingly impossible things when they work together to accomplish something greater than the individual. He went on to joke that the catchy phrase, "that is as crazy as putting a man on the moon," could no longer be used, which is true. The astronauts brought back over 50 pounds of moon rocks and lunar soil, giving further chances to advance our space studies. According to NASA.gov, Neil Armstrong called the flight the beginning of a new age. We certainly know now how much truth there is to that statement because of everything that came from the moon landing. Next, I am going to inform you on how the moon landing impacted the world today. Some research has shown that post-Apollo 11 movies and shows, such as Star Wars and Star Trek, would not have been created if it weren't for the moon landing and all that we learned while we were in space. Other research has shown that the communicators used in Star Trek helped to set the structure for cell phones. So therefore, it is possible to believe that without the moon landing to inspire the show Star Trek, we might not have cell phones. 35 years after the moon landing, according to NationalGeographic.com, Stephen Dix, NASA chief historian, stated 1,000 years from now, that step may be considered the crowning achievement of the 20th century. Well, he was certainly right, because that step set many technological wheels in motion and put us on the path of succession ever since. So, in conclusion, I have shared many reasons as to why the landing has been so important to the world. I have explained various ways of how the moon landing impacted the world back then, how it impacts the world today, and also what it took to get to the moon. I decided to speak on this topic because the moon landing has always fascinated me. It intrigues me to know that with 2 wars going on, the nation came together as a whole and was equally moved. So, the next time you look up at the moon, remember that Americans have been there and that our flag still proudly waves. There will always be technological advances to be made, but this event set the bar at a high level. So if you have a dream of going into space and being the first to step foot on another planet, just go for it. Anything is possible.